Hello and welcome. Tonight, not leaving anything to chance, APC Senate leadership nominees, Senators Godswill Akpabio and Barau Jibrin, meet party's National Working Committee over zoning crisis. The jury appears divided over President Buhari's handling of security in 8 years. Tonight, we examine that critical pillar of the president's campaign promise as he prepares to bow out. 24 hours after his detention for alleged assault on a policeman, court grants Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti bail, but only after conclusion of police investigations in 48 hours.
On business news tonight, countries across sub-Saharan Africa record about 8% depreciation of their currencies since January 2022, according to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF.
On sports news tonight, Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti says the two best teams in Europe will go head-to-head for a place in the Champions League final on Wednesday at the Etihad as Inter Milan beat city rival AC Milan 3-0 on aggregate.
Focus on unleashing the potential of young people. Secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, urges governors-elect ahead of their inauguration.
And in international news from London, the Ukrainian capital Kyiv has been targeted by further Russian air attacks, described by one official as exceptional in density.
We begin tonight with the efforts by the National Working Committee of the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, to resolve the lingering crisis on the leadership consensus zoning arrangement for the 10th National Assembly. The leadership of the party today met with Senator Godswill Akpabio and his deputy, Senator Jibrin Barau. Senators Akpabio, Barau and over 40 other senators arrived at the party secretariat in 2 buses for the meeting, which was presided over by the National Chairman, Senator Abdullahi Adamu.
Senators-elect on the platform of the All Progressives Congress are here for a meeting with the National Working Committee of the party ahead of the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly. The preferred candidates for the office of Senate President highlight the essence of the meeting.
I want to appeal through you, sir, that you should talk to some of the members who are in the APC, who are yet to sign up. You just said here that it is important to obey leadership. That obeying leadership is like obeying God.
We are here as loyal party members to appreciate the endorsement you gave Senator Godswill Akpabio to be the next Senate President by the grace of God.
Their emergence as the preferred candidates has not gone down well with some of the senators-elect, and the party leadership is hoping to hold further consultation.
We did, in the announcement, indicated very clearly that we need further and better consultation. We need to deepen our consultation so that we carry with us as much of those who are going to decide as who becomes Senate President, or who becomes Deputy, or who becomes any of the principal officers of the Senate.
Outside the meeting, the senators are confident of victory.
We have shown that, yes, indeed, we are very poised to bring stability to this country. And we have shown with our numbers that we are increasing by the day.
Nobody will sign his name and go and vote for another thing. I don't believe that. Nobody among these 70 that we have collected will be induced either by money or whatever.
The National Working Committee had last Monday announced the consensus zoning arrangements for the 10th National Assembly, which has continued to generate controversy.
Well, away from the zoning of the 10th National Assembly, the inclusion of independent candidacy in Nigeria's electoral process may soon become reality as the Senate plans to forward the Constitution Amendment Bill to President Muhammadu Buhari for assent. The Senate's decision follows the passage of the bill by some state houses of assembly. The Deputy Senate President, Oviomo Agege, disclosed this new development to lawmakers during Tuesday's plenary session.
Aware, Mr. President, that Gombe State House of Assembly has now forwarded its resolution, convinced that with the approval of the Gombe State House of Assembly, the Constitution 5th Alteration Bill numbers 46, membership of the National Security Council to include presiding officers of the National Assembly 2023, and Bill number 58, independent candidacy 2023, have now made the provisions of Section 9, Section 2 of the Constitution for passage.
I imagine that Mr. President will have no difficulty assenting to these two bills because they are very straightforward. We are still working with the executive arm of government to see how the remaining 19 bills that we passed and the State House of Assembly also concurred that have not been assented to by Mr. President. These are very, very critical and important bills that will shape and support our democratic journey. And we hope that Mr. President and his team will look into them again before the expiration of this tenure.
To security, in Plateau State, over 20 dead bodies have been recovered from two communities, Fungzai and neighboring Kubat, in the newly created district of Buhari in the Mango local government area of the state. According to sources in the communities, the invaders attacked Kubat this morning, setting houses ablaze while attacking the fleeing members of the communities with dangerous weapons, leading to the death of some residents while others were injured. With Kubat village already raised, members of neighboring Fungzai community mobilized women and children to move out of the community in order to escape the attackers, who were said to have started advancing to the community after the attack on Kubat. Unfortunately, those who were escaping in vehicles, motorcycles, ran into an ambush by the advancing attackers, who killed about 20 people, mostly women and children. As a means of curbing reprisal attacks and escalation of the crisis, a 24-hour curfew has been imposed on the local government area. A statement by the chairman of Mango Local Government Council, Minister Daput, says the stay-at-home order was agreed after consultation with security heads as a means of restoring law and order in affected communities. In the meantime, Governor Simon Lalong has condemned the unprovoked attack, describing it as yet another attempt by crisis merchants and criminals to return the state to the dark days of agony. Staying with security, the Ebonyi State Command of the Nigeria Police Force today paraded 4 suspects it alleges were involved in the murder of the traditional ruler of Umwezoka community in Eza North local government area of Ebonyi State, Eze Christopher Ibukwe. Police spokesperson in the state says the command has been on the trail of all the criminals involved and that 4 key suspects have been arrested while others are still at large.
On the 27th of February, he was sitting outside his palace with his wives and children when these 4 people being paraded with additional 30 persons scaled through the fence, entered the compound and shot at him severally and left him in the pool of his blood to die. And so it was reported to us and our operatives swung into action. And they were arrested from different parts of the country, from Enugu and from Anambra State. You can equally hear from them. The person with the AK-47 is still on the run, but in no time we will get him. The first person is Unabike Emmanuel Egede. The second one is Chukudi Aliewa, also known as Eza Get Boys. The third person, Obina Igwe, known as Uwan Pepe. The fourth person, Ukechuku Uwangbegbu. These are the 4 persons here. The other people are still on the run, but in no time we'll get them.
Insecurity is one of the major challenges the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has had to contend with within the last 8 years. In addition to terrorism in the northeast, other security problems emerged during the 2 terms of his administration. In continuation of our assessment of various sectors under the current administration, our correspondent Emperor Simon in this report takes a look at the fight against insecurity under the Buhari government in the last 8 years.
A dark moment in Nigeria's history. The Boko Haram crisis was in its 6th year at the time President Muhammadu Buhari assumed office as Nigeria's 15th head of state.
And defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So help me God.
And with a sense of urgency, he gave his first official order to the military.
The command center will be relocated to Maiduguri and remain until Boko Haram is completely subdued.
Despite a directive by the president, Boko Haram attacks went unabated. More worrisome was the emergence of other forms of criminality.
New security issues have emerged that the administration has not been able to deal with very well, including the secessionist agitation in the southeast, as an example, banditry in the northwest, and then, of course, some other violent criminality, especially inter-community violence. One of the, I would say, sad legacies that the Buhari administration will be leaving behind is the deep division within many communities in Nigeria, especially driven by ethnicity and religion. So we are seeing a lot of clashes that are, driven by these 2 points I've mentioned, religion and ethnicity.
There's no geopolitical zone that doesn't have a security challenge now. If you go to the northeast, of course, it's coming down in the northeast that the attacks of Boko Haram has lessened. But mass kidnapping in the north central and northwest is worrisome. Then if you go to the southeast, you have the issue of IPOB.
At least 7 incidences of mass school abduction were recorded under the Buhari-led government, with more than 1,000 school students abducted and over 600 schools shut down in the last 8 years, according to the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF. Leah Sharibu was abducted from the government girls' secondary school in Dapchi, Yobe State, is still in captivity 5 years after, while over 100 Chibok schoolgirls abducted in 2014 are still in captivity, contrary to President Buhari's promise to get all of the girls released during his tenure. The Federal Capital Territory was not spared from attacks, with terrorists masterminding a jailbreak at the Kuje Medium Correctional Center to free their members, while an attack was launched on a train heading from Abuja to Kaduna. The governments of the United States and the United Kingdom issued threat alerts to their citizens on several occasions, especially concerning the nation's capital. Consequently, the president summoned several Emergency Security Council meetings, giving marching orders to the security chiefs to step up their game.
I think what gave rise to all this is multifaceted. You have the issue of funding, you have the issue of handling, you have the issue of corruption, because you cannot rule out the issue of corruption in the process of purchase of arms and all these things.
Nevertheless, some successes have been recorded, particularly in the fight against insurgency, which has seen over 100,000 Boko Haram fighters and their families surrendered to the military, while thousands of others were neutralized.
Say no to Shekau.
The Buhari administration also increased budgetary allocation to security and defense from over 900 billion naira in 2015 to 2.3 trillion naira in 2022. This led to the procurement of 12 Super Tucano jets from the United States and 30 aircrafts for the Nigerian Air Force and 16 warships for the Nigerian Navy, as well as military communication facilities, including the Giwa 2 Special Communication Project at the Mogadishu Cantonment in Abuja. Experts also have some recommendations for the next administration.
I believe that we cannot, the current template that we have for security with all its challenges cannot give us what we want. So there is a need for security sector reform.
As President Buhari hands over the baton to his successor on May 29, Nigerians look forward to a more secure country where they can go about their businesses and pursue their dreams without fear of the unknown. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, we get more insights into Nigeria's protracted security challenge under the Muhammadu Buhari administration. And joining us to discuss the issues is a former army spokesman, Brigadier General Sani Usman. We have that in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Not leaving anything to chance, APC Senate leadership nominees, Senators Godswill Akpabio and Barau Jibrin, meet party's National Working Committee over zoning crisis. 24 hours after he was detained, alleged assault on a policeman, court grants Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti bail pending the conclusion of police investigations. And French resistance man breaks silence over German prisoners executed in 1944. To legal matters now. Justice Emeka Nwite of the Federal High Court Abuja has granted the request of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, to protect the identity of a witness in a suit against the suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Abba Kyari. At the day's proceedings, counsel to the NDLEA, Sunday Joseph, asked the judge to restrict lawyers, litigants, visitors, as well as journalists who are not parties in the suit from accessing the court during the testimony of the witness. The NDLEA lawyer said the application is to give protection to witnesses who are intelligence officers. The presiding judge granted the application and stood down the matter to allow non-parties in the suit exit the courtroom. When asked about his reaction to the views of other lawyers in court, Mr. Joseph said the application was made in the interest of national security, adding that members of the Inspector General of Police Intelligence Response Team loyal to Mr. Kyari were still coming to court. Meanwhile, the Chief Magistrate Court in Yaba, Lagos has granted bail to Afrobeat musician Seun Kuti. The court also ordered the Nigerian police to finish the investigation into the alleged assault of a policeman in 48 hours and allow Mr. Kuti go home. Seun Kuti's bail condition is to make available to sureties who must have landed properties in Lagos. The Chief Magistrate also asked the police to remove itself from prosecuting him and that the case file be duplicated and forwarded to the Lagos State Directorate of Public Prosecutions for advice. In his submission, the police prosecutors claim that the assaulted policeman is in a coma and receiving treatment at an undisclosed hospital. However, Mr. Kuti's lawyer, Adeyinka Olumide, countered that the police already stated publicly that the police officer trailed and went to Seun's house and accepted 12,000 naira to repair his car. A retiring justice of the Court of Appeal, Justice Oludotun Adefope Okoje, has condemned the slow pace of justice delivery in the country. Justice Okoje spoke today at the valedictory court session organized by the Court of Appeal to mark her retirement from the bench, the event held at the Court of Appeal premises on Lagos Island. The governor of her state, Governor Dapo Abiodun, other representatives of the executives, retired and serving judges, senior advocates, other lawyers, family and friends were all on ground to honor the retiring justice. The justice, who spent 27 years on the bench, says that it is unacceptable the length of time cases spend in our courts, suggesting that the judiciary should embrace arbitration to speed up justice delivery.
My passion, both at the bar and on the bench, has always been to right injustice and correct as much as possible the ills in society. It has also been to protect the individual against oppression and against the coercive might of the government or any authority. For this reason, it is a pain in my heart when I see a deserving litigant turned away from the seat of justice for any reason or any technicality. I pray that there should be a change in our courts where judgments are given or cases lost, not on technical grounds, but with recourse to the justice of the matter and a hearing on the merits. Now, I cannot end my address without expressing my pains and that of the general public on the pace of justice delivery in the court. If the truth be told, our pace of justice delivery is in total paralysis. We can no longer hide our heads in the sand like an ostrich whose hind parts are exposed. It is not acceptable that a case averagely takes more than 5 years to conclude a trial, more than 3 years minimum in the Court of Appeal, and averagely about 12 years in the Supreme Court, given a conservative figure. A country that seeks foreign investment must get its court system functional, accelerated, and receptive to the needs of the people, both domestic and international. No nation wants to invest in a country where judicial disputes take forever to conclude or at all. I thus make the following suggestions. 1. As most international companies, including domestic ones, have arbitration clauses in their contracts, in order to avoid the legal system and determine disputes expeditiously, the courts must thus encourage arbitration rather than consider it as a challenge to their authority. All cases and appeals also in respect of arbitration should be put on the fast-track list for speedy resolution.
Congratulations to her on her life of service. Let's head to Abuja now, where Linda Kigwe is standing by. Hi, Linda. It's good to see you.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you too. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, is asking states to move away from the regular empowerment programs and invest heavily in initiatives that will unleash the economic potentials of young people in Nigeria. Mr. Mustafa represented the Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, at the second day of induction of newly elected and re-elected governors in Abuja. According to the SGF, areas such as fintech, entertainment and agriculture value chain all have huge potentials for states to shore up their revenue base and reduce overdependence on federal allocations.
It is day 2 of the ongoing induction of newly elected and re-elected governors. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, some former governors and representatives of the diplomatic community are in attendance. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who delivers the keynote. He focuses on the need for governors to unleash the potential in young people by making targeted investments that are capable of creating entrepreneurs.
It is imperative to unleash the potentials that lie in our youth. It's no longer news that over 75% of our population is under the age of 35. We must move away from so-called youth empowerment programs that do not add any value. The youth do not need handouts. They need investments that will propel them to wealth creators.
Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State presents the lead paper with a focus on managing the process of governance. He underscores the importance of getting to business as soon as the governors are sworn in on the 29th of May.
Time is something that we do not have. Time is something that we cannot waste. Time is something that we cannot be trivial about. You should not leave here believing that you are an 8-year governor. Please, you are a 4-year governor. And from day one, you start counting your days.
The panel session dwells extensively on issues around budgeting, team selection, and project prioritization. On the sideline of the event, the Oyo State Governor shares his thoughts on the issues of local government financial autonomy.
The kind of reform we're talking about right now is still centered on consumption. You're thinking about what is coming from the federation account to the local government. How do you share it? That is the reform we're talking about. And some of us said, no, let's do a reform that can ensure that local governments, they are viable, they can generate their own resources, and they can then spend it, not just what is coming from the federal allocation, because that will ultimately, it will dry up.
The elections are over, and in a matter of weeks, all elected governors will be sworn in. as citizens watch closely on how they will deliver on their campaign promises.
President Muhammadu Buhari has returned to Abuja after his trip to the UK. The president's aircraft, which landed this evening at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, had departed the nation's capital on 3rd of May for the coronation of King Charles III in the United Kingdom, which took place on the 6th of May 2023. President Buhari was scheduled to return to the country after the ceremony in London, but the presidential spokesman, Mr. Femi Adesina, announced an extension of his stay in the UK by a week on the advice of his dentist. Meanwhile, hours after his return, the presidency reassures Nigerians that the administration will continue to prioritize the issue of inflation. According to a statement today by presidential spokesman Mr. Garba Shehu, inflation is a worldwide problem and no nation is immune to it, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. Acknowledging that the nation's inflation rate of 22% is undoubtedly high and worrisome, Mr. Garba maintains that it would be incorrect to suggest that the Buhari administration is not making efforts to address the volatile global cost of living crisis. And still on the economy, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, believes a framework for reporting the environment and gender inclusion in Nigeria's extractive sector will be impactful in guiding Nigeria's activities in the explorative and extractive industry. Mrs. Ahmed stated this during the launch of the framework in Abuja. The structure, which is a product of the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NATI, is to address two key issues, which include matters of environmental degradation, the gender disparity and social exclusion in the oil, gas and mining sectors.
But through the recoveries, the Secretary to the Government of Tobacco Activities
on the gender and environmental reporting frameworks that are to be launched today. This represents another important milestone recorded by NATI. I'm told that the two sets of frameworks were developed to guide Nigeria's reporting obligation to the global EITI in the areas of gender and environment, in the oil and gas, as well as in the mining sectors. The development of these frameworks are commendable, not just for the purpose of meeting Nigeria's obligation to the global EITI, but also to help resolve the lingering negative impact of oil and gas and mining exploration on our host communities, as well as reducing the widening gender disparity in the extractive sector. I want to call on the international EITI to always consider and respect the sovereignty and the peculiarities of its member countries, the context, the uniqueness and diversities of each of the member states in the implementation of the global initiative in their respective countries, particularly during the validation exercise being conducted by the international body every 3 years.
As part of measures to protect local inventions, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Olorunimbe Mamora, has recommended the banning of all foreign goods that can be produced locally in Nigeria. Addressing State House correspondents at the 71st Ministerial Media Briefing, Dr. Mamora expressed regret over the underutilized research, works and inventions gathering dust in the various agencies because of lack of investors. Our State House correspondent Gloria Umezoki reports.
The nation's science, technology and innovation sector comes under the spotlight at the 71st weekly ministerial briefing in the State House.
Thank you very much.
The minister is categorical about the correlation between research and the level of development it stimulates, but made no bones about his regret over the underutilized research works and the fate of inventions by Nigerians.
It will interest you that virtually all our agencies have come up with one invention or the other. But the challenge has always been taking these research outputs to the market. There's so many outputs that are still gathering dust on the shelves in various agencies. We are also looking at how we can compel, as it were, maybe through legislation, that once they
continue to inaugurate more projects initiated by his administration in the state, with the commissioning of a 16.71-kilometer road. While commissioning the project, the governor urged residents of the state to guard the project in their areas against vandalism.
The 16.7-kilometer Ifia-Ikpe-Mbage-Yob-Ikorabia-Osomko Road in Oborakara local government area is another stride in the Odomi Manuel administration to upscale the infrastructure outlook of Akwa Ibom State.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the governor is here to ensure it is officially put to use as the people turn out to witness the inauguration.
This project you are looking at is a hybrid project. The level of this road has met all international standards. It will stand the test of time, and you don't expect any pothole.
The goodwill messages are not in short supply.
This area has been completely opened up and is the food basket of this state. I'm very excited and thank you for all the good works you have done in our state. God will continue to bless you.
Having done what we did in February 25th, 2023, and with all what we also did in March 2023, we are saying that we'll continue same with the incoming governor to make sure that we keep Oborokara and Akwa Ibom State in PDP. It is only PDP that can do this kind of celebration, no other party. Your Excellency, I thank you and I thank you.
On his part, Governor Emmanuel says the commissioning of the road project is in line with his campaign promise to provide access to rural areas and drive economic transformation.
This happens to be a very rural area, and I said so during our second term, that will do a whole lot to impact on the economic lives of the people within the rural area. And this is one of them. We are doing outfall drains up to 2.1 kilometers, outfall drains. And we are doing roads of almost 17 kilometers within this rural community. And many more. There are still a whole lot, especially towards Amayam, that we are yet to commission.
He then proceeds to inaugurate the project.
In the name of God the Father,
amen,
and of the Son,
amen,
and of the Holy Spirit,
amen.
The state government appeals to the people of Oborakara and Ikorekpene Senatorial District in general to take ownership of the project for the benefit of all.
Now time for business news. Here's Ann Wilder.
Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says that countries across sub-Saharan Africa have recorded about 8% depreciation of their currencies since January last year. According to the Washington-based fund, the depreciation across the region were largely driven by external factors, including interest rate hikes in the United States. Also, foreign exchange earnings took a hit as demand for the region's exports dropped because of the economic slowdown in major economies. At the same time, high oil and food prices pushed up import costs in the year 2022. The IMF states that about half of the countries in the region had budgeted deficits exceeding 5% of their GDP, putting pressure on their exchange rates. The French government plans to budget €500 million annually for the new tax credit for environmentally friendly investment. According to the country's finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, the tax credit aims at spurring investment in environmental friendly projects and revive France's industrial sector as European companies come increasingly under pressure from US companies. He also says the tax credit is expected to generate private investment totaling €23 billion by the year 2030 and create about 40,000 jobs. Back here in Nigeria, we head to the local market. It sustained yesterday's positive performance. Bullish sentiment returned to the NGX at the close of trade today. Ladi Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, from a modest gain of 9 billion naira yesterday, today the market cap gains a bigger 102 billion naira. Shining there. Let's look at the all-share index, 0.36%, 52,419 points. Looks to be nearing the resistance zone there in the descending channel, talking about the all-share index from March high. So it'll be interesting to see if it breaks that resistance. We could head to 55K for the all-share index. Market cap, 28.54 trillion naira. Let's look at the activity chart now. We'll see lower volume than what we had yesterday, but we'll still see some buying pressure right now. Value, 6.78 billion naira deals. More deals than we had yesterday, 6,143 deals. Let's look at the gainers counter now. We'll see Nigerian breweries, the top brewer leading that counter up 9.97%. And we see FTN Cocoa on that list too, up 9.68%, 34 kobo, and Sovereign Insurance also 46 kobo, up 9.52%. Let's look at the top losers now. We see Computer Warehouse Group there, topping that counter, 1.69 kobo, down 9.63%. But today, the financial services sector took the shine, with the Fugas adding to their share price, with GTCO was up about 4% today. Well, that's how your money performed. It's back to you, Anne.
And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Millicent will be back with the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you, Anne. Excavation work is to start soon to find the bodies of up to 40 German soldiers who were executed by the French resistance in June 1944. Edmond Dreville, 98, is the last surviving member from the local branch of the FTP resistance group and personally witnessed the mass execution at a place called Le Vert. In a recorded deposition, he described how his detachment of 30 fighters were escorting German prisoners through countryside east when the order came to kill them. Simon Peter has more on this and other stories and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Ukrainian capital Kyiv has been targeted by further Russian air attacks, described by one official as exceptional in density. Footage filmed overnight showed flashes and explosions over Kyiv's skyline. Ukraine said all 18 missiles were shot down, and footage showed air defences destroying targets over the city. But Russia said its attack, which used drones and missiles, had hit all its targets. Here, still photos showing fire services putting out blazes on several buses that were hit. Moscow has stepped up its air campaign in recent weeks ahead of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive. 5 men have been found guilty of an audacious jewel heist in the German city of Dresden. The thieves stole precious items worth 113 million euros from the city's State Museum in 2019. Police recovered many of the jewels, including a diamond-encrusted sword, but it's feared the rest of the looted treasure may never be found. The men, all members of a notorious criminal family network, face sentences of 4 to 6 years in prison. At least 10 people have been killed and up to 30 others are unaccounted for after a blaze broke out overnight at a 4-storey building in downtown Wellington, the capital of New Zealand. Fire and emergency services were called to the Loafers Lodge hostel on Adelaide Road in central Wellington, where a fire started from the top floor. A total of 52 people were taken out of the building and at least 5 were rescued from the roof, but others remain unaccounted for. Talking to a morning news programme, New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins said there could be more fatalities.
Obviously it's quite confronting, and also just to speak to the first responders who are on the scene in terms of what they dealt with when they arrived in the small hours of the morning. Clearly a traumatic situation for them. I know that they'll be feeling this at the moment. Of course, a number of investigations take place after an event such as this. That kicks in automatically, so there's obviously the police, the coroner. There are a range of different investigations that take place.
The United States is urging an investigation by Mali's transitional government into the likely execution of hundreds of villagers. It blames elements of the Malian armed forces in cooperation with Russian private military contractor Wagner Group. A State Department spokesman said that the US was appalled by the disregard for human life during the operation in Mura last year. A probe, it said, should be independent, impartial, efficient, exhaustive and transparent. 2 Egyptian planes carrying aid have landed in Port Sudan as assistance continues pouring into the war-ridden country. The planes were loaded with around 20 tons of medical supplies. The fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces has caused a humanitarian crisis that threatens to destabilize the region, displacing more than 700,000 people inside Sudan and forcing around 200,000 to flee into neighboring countries. 2 skeletons have been found in Italy's Pompeii, the latest discovery coming from the ruins of the ancient Roman city wiped out by an eruption of the Mount Vesuvius, a volcano nearly 2,000 years ago. Italy's Culture Ministry said the human remains were recovered from the house of the painters at work and are probably of 2 men in their 50s who died in an earthquake that accompanied the eruption. It's thought they were killed not by volcanic ash but by building collapses. The Pompeii site has seen a burst of recent archaeological activity aimed at halting years of decay and neglect. And the actor Sylvester Stallone has announced he and his family are launching a new reality TV show.
This is more of a documentary, so what you see here is what you get.
That's when I knew I wanted to be a boxer.
The girls want his attention.
I want to do something with you. Don't be
Called
jealous.
The Family Stallone, it details daily life of the eccentric film star, his wife Jennifer and his 3 daughters, Sophia, Sistine and Scarlett, in their home in California. Following in the well-trodden steps of other famous families like the Kardashians and the Osbournes, Sylvester says he agreed to film the 8-part reality show to spend more time with his family.
I thought, okay, I'm on the road so much. I probably have been on the road probably 60% of my life. And looked around and said, my God, my daughters are grown up, everything else. And I'm going, wouldn't it be great to just spend some serious time with them where they couldn't escape?
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon, and it's now time for sports news. Inter Milan are heading to Istanbul for the Champions League final after beating city rivals AC Milan 3-0 on aggregate, courtesy of a goal from Lautaro Martinez tonight. Inter will reach the final for the first time in 13 years will face either Manchester City or Real Madrid in Istanbul on June the 10th in Turkey. Now, Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti believes the 2 best teams in Europe will lock horns for a spot in the Champions League final on Wednesday when the Spanish Giants visit Manchester City. The semi-final tie is delicately poised at 1-1 after the first leg in Madrid last week, as Manchester City seek revenge for a defeat at the same stage of the competition last season. Meanwhile, Pep Guardiola insists his legacy, in his words, is exceptional already, even if Manchester City do not achieve their treble dream. As they prepare to host Real Madrid in England, a potentially historic end of the season lies ahead of Manchester City, with 1 win needed to claim a 5th Premier League title in 6 years and an FA Cup final at Wembley against Manchester United. And FIFA has announced that Arsenal forward Folarin Balogun has switched national team allegiances from England to the United States. Balogun, who moved to England as a 2-year-old, had the luxury to represent United States, England and Nigeria, the country of his parents' birth. He will be hoping to establish himself in the US team ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, Barcelona sporting director Jody Croft will leave the newly crowned champions at the end of the season. Barcelona said that Croft will not be renewing his contract owing to what they describe as his wish to embark on a new professional venture. And that's it on sports. I'm Jeffrey Zomes. Back to Millicent for the rest of the news at 10.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And the main news again. We told you that the Senate leadership, the APC nominees, Senators Godswill Akpabio and Barau Jibrin, today met with the party's National Working Committee with a view to addressing the crisis over the party's zoning arrangement. Also today, we brought you a report that 24 hours after his detention for alleged assault on a policeman, court granted Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti bail pending the conclusion of police investigation. As soon as it's 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Melissa Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.